So hi everybody, how's it going? Mork here, and we are finally doing the very last of tier lists for the Warband members. And right now we're doing the Cult of the Possessed for Mordheim Paramod. So maybe before I kind of like start talking about the Warband more closely and its like Warband members, I just kind of want to say that I'm like not as satisfied, or how would I say it? Like I'm pretty happy with my rankings for the mercenaries, for the Skaven, and for the sisters. But I'm not as happy with my rankings for like the witch hunters, for the undead, and I don't think I'll be as happy with my rankings for the cult of the possessed. I think this is just like for a very simple reason, is that witch hunters, undead, and cult of the possessed, I really haven't played them in PvP as much as all the other warbands. So I don't feel overall as kind of confident in my answers. I guess this is my kind of like excuses for my rankings and stuff. The first character that we're going to talk about is actually called the Magister. And I think like Magister probably belongs to the God tier category. Magister is like a really good unit in my opinion. There are for the reason that you can like build this sort of a character in 1,000,000 ways, and like this character is like probably the greatest support for all the other cult characters that you have in your warband. So it's like a very important supportive unit that actually enables what your warband is doing. And if you notice in PvP, this is probably also the number one ban against the cult of the possessed, the Magister, because of the power he brings to the team. And I think there are like a bunch of different ways you can go with this character. You can either go, for example, like a melee resistance tank route, and with that you can still be like very useful, like a damage dealer or a buffer. You can like stack acid breath. The damage over time effect doesn't stack with the intelligence, so like acid breath is like a very good spell for sort of a melee resistance tag, and it's kind of like very interesting. So this is like, I would say, one of the builds, just going kind of like the acid breath route. The other build that you can do, you can still like, as a leader, you can still go for the order if you want, but I still feel like this sort of a magister leader is kind of better off just casting his own spells. Like Weapons of Destruction is like an amazing spell that kind of like enables your warband, especially if you're trying to focus on armor piercing. You don't necessarily have to like focus on armor piercing with the cult. I think there are like two different ways with your cult warband overall on what you want to focus, or maybe like three builds. One of those builds is like focus on piercing the armor absorption, like piercing as much armor as possible. The other way to build cult is kind of going for the crit chance and trying to get as highest of a crit as possible. And the third sort of a build would be kind of like focusing on a bit of magic, but I don't think it's as good. The reason why I also like this Magister leader is also very good is because of the Vision of Torment spell, which kind of basically stuns all targets that fail a stun resistance test. Honestly, I sometimes just don't understand this spell, because I feel like it's like an RNG. It either like stuns or it inflicts a debuff. It's like so it's like a casino. I didn't realize this, to be honest. Anyway, a Vision of Torment can be like a very good spell. There's also like the Blood Sacrifice, right? So you can also just kind of make him a melee sort of a guy. One thing you notice that he doesn't really have like very high weapon skill. So that kind of may prove like difficult to actually proc this Blood Sacrifice, but actually I think it's very easy to like proc this with an attracting lure. whenever you actually manage to trigger attracting lure, your hit chance against fleeing targets, like any fleeing targets, is significantly higher. And in that case, like, combine this blood sacrifice with quick casting, right? And in that case, you're gonna have kind of like significantly reduced of like spell cost. So you can like potentially do some like really crazy damage, and that sort of a build is kind of focusing on Word of Pain. And to be honest, we haven't really seen any like Word of Pain um, Magisters in PvP yet, but I can totally see like a Word of Pain build like wiping out the enemy team. It's like that powerful in my opinion. A bit of like an interesting thing is that Magister has a bit of an anti-synergy with Doomweaver and the Idol of Change. Because if you're gonna be like spamming, like, let's take a look at this. If you're gonna be spamming like Word of Pain, right? You are actually gonna end up killing the Idol of Change with this damage right here. The other thing is that there's also like anti-synergy with like the buffs that you provide to your team with the weapons of destructions, as an example, or the boon of chaos, or the curse of chaos, or like applying the acid breath. So there's like actually a lot of anti-synergy with the Doomweaver, and not to mention there's also like the chains of chaos. If you're playing a Doomweaver and at the same time the Magister, I think you have to be like a little bit more smart in how you use your abilities, like Chains of Chaos and so on. You're also able to build with this character a ranger, like a spellcaster, ranger sort of a character, like a support archer, while also doing some magic. I think that sort of a build will be more prominent if there ever happens like some changes to the reload mechanic and how it works, but we'll see. Alright, the next character that we have is the Mutant, and Mutant is also like another character that you can build in 1 million ways, and a lot of these million ways just kind of like depend on the mutations that you actually get. You can for sure like make a sort of a crit tank build, or just like a regular tank build, or you can also just build like an armor piercing build. But I think where Mutant shines the most are the builds related to any crit chance. So for example, like a sharpshooter build, which can also have like deep wounds and stuff. This build can be also like supported by the Magister in a way. I'm thinking what else is there. Oh, and I think there's also like a melee crit chance build, which can be like either like the glass cannony way, but you can also make like a shielded sort of a guy who dares people to attack him, you know. That's also a way to do Mutant. There's like 1 million ways to build a guy. I guess the biggest issue that this guy has is like his leadership stats, and that he's like prone to like failing a fear and terror test. So I think Mutant like either deserves to be in the insane tier or really good tier. It's not as consistent as Skaven, to be honest, but they can still deal like insane amounts of damage. I think I'll just for now I'll put this into the really good category, but I might change my mind on where to actually put this guy. I guess the next character that I'm going to talk about is the Marauder. I was kind of like thinking about like comparing it directly to Possessed, and maybe that actually just kind of makes sense because they're both like very similar characters. I think the biggest mistake that people make with the Marauder is that they're trying to build it with a shield. And I think if you're trying to build any sort of a shield tank character, you're much better off actually going for the mutant rather than this guy, because this guy can at least like disengage. This guy cannot disengage, so you may end up in a situation where you're just kind of stuck on one character forever, and you're just like very unhappy about the situation and where you ended up. So I think if you're trying to build a Marauder, I think you should be trying to build like a full damage Ideally, probably the Mighty Charge build, which kind of just focuses on trying to kill your target as soon as possible so that you're able to retrigger your passive and just kind of keep ramping up your passive over and over again until it can get like absolutely crazy. I think in a similar fashion, Possess can also be built in this way. I think his role is also just like very similar. You're just kind of like trying to build a damage dealing guy. I don't think there is like any reason for you to go for anything dodgy or like dodge related. I don't think it's the way. So what are like kind of like the main differences? Because like their playstyle is like very similar. Well, I feel like better damage scaling for your charges you're going to get out of Marauder because you're gonna be using, or I think you should be using with this character, two-handed weapons. And two-handed weapons scale much better because they don't have a minus 25% damage modifier, which this character is stuck with. That kind of like brings up an issue that he might get parried, right? But you're able to get at least like some different mutations and stuff, like instead of like the hands and stuff. Not to mention, if you're really just worried of like parry stances from the enemy, you're gonna have like attracting lure, which should be able to break the stances. Not to mention, you should also have this guy who should be able to break the stances possibly with an AoE stun. This character might be prone to fear and terror, but at the same time, this character doesn't proc Serenity. And also, like another thing why this sort of a character can be very nice is if you are using the two-handed weapon, you're going to have overall much better two-turning opportunities if you swap to, for example, like a spear or something like that, you know? I would just kind of build this guy as like a mighty charge sort of a build. With this guy, I think also I would kind of go that way, just like either a mighty charge or just like trying to deal as much damage as possible. I don't necessarily think these guys are daredevilers. I mean, they can work as daredevil characters, but I don't think they really have like as much accuracy in my opinion. I think if you're trying to build a crit, you should probably go for the mutant. Okay, so what are some good things about Possessed that might actually be better than the Marauder? So this guy, Possessed, is not going to have like any issues with any potential parries. But he won't be able to two-turn you by weapon swapping because he cannot swap weapons. He has like a very good mutation with the extra arm, which can be like absolutely crazy. The damage scaling is kind of crazy on the one-handed weapons that this guy has, so he's like also like a pretty good older target other than your impressive. Kitten Paul likes to call this character like a mini spawn, which I guess is kind of a true. This character also has like extra movement, and this character also has fear, which for better or worse is well, it's like a double-edged sword, right? Because you might get Serenity, but then again, you also have the tool of against Serenity with the attracting lure to get rid of those targets. I think a lot of people just like make a comparison between like what is better, is Marauder better or is Possessed better? And I think like the answer to that question is like why not just use both of them at the same time? Right? I think that kind of makes the most sense to me. All right. As for the leader, honestly, hmm. So what does getting this leader imply? Right? If you're getting like this sort of a leader, you're replacing your Magister. Your Magister is very good at like providing your team with armor penetration. I think this sort of a character could work well, for example, with the crit team, like a team that's kind of like is focusing on stunning the enemy or like critting the enemy. People used to make in the past like order leaders, which was just kind of focusing on doing like 4 orders per turn. instead of just one, and this can be achieved by going for Adrenaline Rush Mastery plus an injury, or Adrenaline Rush Mastery plus an introspection. I think it's called introspection. So you may be able to actually get like four orders off of this character. I don't know if that's like necessarily good. I think like probably a very unexplored character is just like going glass cannon or like full damage build with this guy. I think that's kind of like unexplored in PvP, in my opinion. But I'm just gonna like put this like tad down than the possessed, because you're better off keeping the Magister instead of going for this sort of a leader. But I can maybe like see some sort of a scenario where it could be good. So in that case, like if I'm just saying it like that, I think I'm gonna like put this into the not bad category, right? Because ideally you would want your possessed to be supported by this character. But if you are like running possessed, then you are not supported by this character anymore. But in that case, I think if you're like running this sort of a leader, I think Doomweaver can support this character, but I'm just kind of like getting ahead. Next character that we have is the Impressive, and this Impressive is called the Chaos Spawn. Honestly, okay, so what are like the biggest issues that Chaos Spawn has? He just kind of like starts with 6 movement speed, so it's sometimes just like a little bit awkward to get to the right places. On the other hand, this guy just kind of like pierces, parry. He can be like amazing. He can do like a lot of damage even like without a daredevil. So you can like kind of go crazy on armor piercing and just destroy everybody. Um, Maybe I should be kind of like putting this guy already into the insane tier, because you can also like make a sort of a anticipation Wordstone Horns build. I guess I'll just kind of like showcase it, because you can see like on damage received gain a warp buff that increases melee and rage resistance by 4%, and you can combine it with anticipation. Yeah, and in that case you'll kind of end up with whenever somebody hits you, your melee resistance is gonna be increased by 10%. Yeah, and you still also have like sort of skills like which focus on like Sinch's warding, for example. You can still go kind of like frenzy for some defense against magic. But I don't think like going frenzy is necessarily good for Chaos Spawn, just because this sort of a spell exists, and it's called nope, not Chaos Evolution, but it's called Chaotic Advantage. So, what does Chaotic Advantage say? After every dodge stance, parry stance, sidestep, or web of steel action, receive an 80% chance to recover 5 offense points. So, with Chaotic Advantage, like this character can become like very scary to deal with, and like you might have like a very hard time actually going after this character, and you don't even necessarily need for defense like things like sidestep, for example. It's very often just okay to kind of just stay at the dodge stance and just receive those 5 offense points, and then I don't know if people are going to actually dare to attack this character. um Maybe one of the. I think overall this character is much better off playing like an armor penetration playstyle rather than crit playstyle. And what I mean by that is that, for example, you have like this extra limp plate, right? So if you want to play like a crit chance Chaos Spawn, you're also going to need mutations for the, like, for example, either Ripper for the critical hit damage, but I think this might be a little bit of a bait, to be honest. Or the Crusher. I think Crusher is overall much better because of the critical hit chance. Or the Smasher. Like, because this is like your only way or like the best way to actually like stack some sort of a crit chance. But overall, I think you're gonna be like much better off actually going for a build which focuses on the armor penetration, because you're going to end up with like more flexibility overall of like what you actually want to do with your build. So for example, like if you have this extra limp X, right? Let's take a look. So as you can see, like armbands have like very freaking good like base damage. You're basically like dual wielding spears that cannot be parried. So like I don't think it's even necessarily worth it for you to go for these like, I don't know, like destroyers. And if you like take a look at the damage here, it's like 25 to 33. I think you're almost like better off just like leaving like the original armband. And in that case, you're gonna be able to have like more flexibility. And for example, go for those thousand eyes, or maybe goes for those Wordstone hordes. Maybe go for the magic resistance. Where is it? Like in the demon soul and so on. So I think like the armor penetration build is overall much better because it has like overall more flexibility with the stuff, with the mutations, rather than the crit build. And I think you're gonna be happier with this sort of a build. Um, I don't know, like this character can be like an absolute freaking menace. And yeah, I'm also referring to that anticipation build. Alright, next character that we have is called the... Well, Brethren is like... Brethren is like the plural, right? So like what is the singular of this guy? Is it like a brother? But okay, well, the next characters that we have are the Brethren. And honestly, I think I'm just gonna put this character in the okay category. As a melee, I think they're just awful, and I don't think you should ever play them as melee. I guess, hypothetically, can you play them as melee resistance tank? That's a interesting question. I guess you can play it as a melee resistance tank. Wouldn't Dark Soul be better? Not necessarily. Honestly, I think this guy just kind of like works best as a ranged support character. We're just kind of like trying to set up like some sort of a situation where perhaps, maybe, you crit a character. Well, I'm saying a lot of perhaps and maybe. So, because if you see here, this guy is like a passive, like a lurker, and his like Overwatch stance as a critical hit chance increased by 20%. And if we combine this with, for example, Entrenched, you're gonna overall end up with plus 30% critical chance to hit somebody. Overall, like this character doesn't really get all that high critical hit chance. I mean, it can get like high hit chance and critical hit chance, but like it's like a weird balance where maybe you don't have like enough accuracy or like enough ballistic skill or something like that. Maybe just to show you, like for example, you can go for this, and you can go for the Martial Grimoire, right? So you're gonna end up with 20 ballistic skill and 10 accuracy, so it's gonna be 15% crit chance. And you could also like use a bow of crit chance, which is like plus 8%. I mean short bow of crit chance, which would be like overall 30% crit chance. And once you combine it with Lurker, you're gonna end up with 50% crit chance. And if you combine it with Entrenched, you're gonna end up with 60% crit chance to like hit this Entrenched. But like if you're gonna be using like short bow instead of bow, then you're gonna have like increased hit chance overall. So it's a kind of a weird balance of like how you actually want to build this unit, but I think this unit overall just kind of works best as a sort of a support archer who sometimes like crits with his entrenched and sets up a target. As for the LGT version of this character, I think it's probably honestly good. And again, I think I wouldn't just bother building this character as a damage unit or like a melee unit. I wouldn't bother building this unit whatsoever as a melee unit. I think if you want to go to the melee, you already have like amazing choices in the heroes, right? But I think if you want to be like most effective with this unit, you're probably gonna be best off building a support archer, which again has the possibility to crit somebody. Boom, boom, and you have like entrenched, right? Not to mention you can also go for the sharpshooter mastery, which is going to increase your critical hit chance even further. Then you can also like combine it with Doomweaver, with the Idol of Lust, right? I think this can kind of like work in a crit chancey sort of a way. I don't think I would necessarily go for Vital Shot. I mean, I guess you can if you're gonna be trying to stack as much damage as possible in this way, but again, I would try to build this as a sort of a support character with a knee shot, for example, or probably with a knee shot. Probably with a knee shot. I don't think you necessarily need a nerf shot because you're gonna have like so much stance breaking with the lures, with the random crits, and uh, and something else, but I forgot what the hell I was talking about. If you're trying to build like a sharpshooter damage dealing build with this guy, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it whatsoever. You're going to have like much better stats for a crit sort of a playstyle with the mutant rather than the brethren. I'm just gonna like showcase it right here. So for example, if I take like a veteran here, and if I take Book of Training Accuracy, and if I take like Martial Grimoire, so I can like very nicely get here 16 ballistic skill and 16 accuracy, and then I can decide if I want to go +4 ballistic skill with the mutant, or if I want to go +4 accuracy with the mutant, right? And that's gonna be like overall very, 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 very nice. And then I can like also go for the short bow and stuff. And what this 15 accuracy allows me to do is to go for deep wounds, so that I've actually also like some damage scaling on my bows and stuff, right? If we compare it to the Brethren and his stats, so if we like put this at like 16 ballistic skill or like even like 15, you can see that this guy is just gonna be always like one away from the accuracy. So in that case, you cannot go either for the sharpshooter mastery or you cannot go for the deep wounds mastery. So it kind of like becomes a trade-off of what you actually want to be doing with your characters overall. The next character that we have is the Dark Soul, and I think like for Dark Souls, I think it can be like especially frustrating going for a shield build. I think overall with Dark Souls you just kind of want to go with two-handed weapons and whack people to death, in my opinion, or like just kind of cause a general chaos with mighty charges and lures possibly. I think that's what this character is best at, but you are actually able to play like for example melee resistance tanks, but the issue is like that these guys can like easily very easily get stuck on the wrong characters and that they just cannot move away. So I think like overall the best playstyle for the cult is just kind of like going from like one character to another and killing them. This character also is able to wear heavy armor, and it's like relatively easy to go for with the knowledge Mordheim and the armor proficient. So it's also like very, very good. But you can also kind of go like a light armor, and that's completely fine as well. If you want to do like sort of a crit build, you're also able to go for what do you call it? Like the great sword, you know, plus 16% crit chance. It's very, very good. Oh, maybe like one thing that I didn't mention regarding this character are the mutations that this character has in Paramod, which is like kind of neat. Some of it just kind of looks ugly with helmets and stuff, and unfortunately, there's not really a way to like go around it because we don't really have like people who are able to make changes in the model so that like things look good and stuff. So yeah, like this guy can like make like a pretty good like a dodge tank, slash melee resistance guys, or even like a parry tank. This guy doesn't have access to halberd, so if you're gonna want to parry, you're probably best of like going for some sword builds or shield builds. But again, I don't think like shield builds are very good in my opinion. Uh, yeah, featureless face is also really freaking amazing because you have like perception for free. So these guys can also make like a very, very good scouting unit. And featureless face and like perception and scouting is like very important on aggressive warbands to just have a freaking idea where every single enemy unit is and see if in some ways you're able to take advantage of their positioning stuff. So like I think featureless phase is probably the best mutations you can have there, but you can also do like crazy magic resistance builds if you combine this, for example, with Singe's warding. Like if you're like a mage hater, you can go crazy for the amulet and it's completely fine because you don't care about like fear and terror because you're immune to all alone fear and terror tests. So you can like get like crazy amounts of magic resistance. So if I'm saying that, I think I can kind of just put this honestly in the insane tier. As for the Let's Got Talent version, I don't understand, but it's like extremely popular for some reason. I think it's extremely popular because people just kind of like playing this heavy armor sort of a tank with this guy. But I guess for people it's like a comfort spot, I would say. The fact they don't have to like worry about any of the all alone fear and terror tests while like easily going for heavy armor with this guy. You can like easily go for the hardy and armor proficient, and I think people just kind of like that. But people also just kind of like going for a daredevil build with a spear and a shield. I'm not sure why people like him so much. Like, why would I play this character when I can play these heroes? And I think these heroes are gonna do overall a much better and deadlier job at killing the enemy rather than this guy. So this character is not bad by any means, but I think you're just kind of like better off going for these characters who are gonna do like a much better job at actually killing the enemy and so on. But I can understand why people want to pick this character and stuff. Next character that we have is Poison Wind Globadier, and Poison Wind Globadier kind of fits into this warband if you're trying to play like a crit based build with the daggers. Is there anything else really? I guess this warband has like mutations and stuff, and mutations have sometimes like assigned poison effect to them. He's able to like reduce poison resistance. I guess there's like a crit build that you can go for, which can kind of like support the warband, or you can go for well, the ranged support. Of course, you can do it. Yeah, that's completely fine as well. Yeah, there's like the poison thing with the potent globes, which kind of helps the mutations. I guess he does have like that enriched globe. No, not the enriched globe, but the warp globe, which could be kind of interesting. maybe to deal with some of the melee resistance tags in this way, possibly. Could be relevant, honestly. I don't know. I think just because this guy can like be there for the crit team and like be part of that crit team, I think I'm just kind of like put this into the good category. And the last character that we have is called Doomweaver. Honestly, one of my regrets is like putting the indie undead warband, the Doomweaver, into the really good category. I think it was more fair to put this character into the insane category. Just because like this character, Doomweaver, ironically, doesn't with the Idol of Change doesn't have like as big of a synergy as all the other characters. Uh, but like, of course, like every warband, every Chaos warband has access to necromancers for some reason, which is dumb in my opinion. So you are even like able to play that if you want, with any freaking warband. It's a bit dumb, in my opinion. But like, imagine that there is like no necromancer like borrowed by this guy, and it's just kind of like the synergy with the Idol of Change with the with this guy. Honestly, I think there's like a lot of like anti-synergy overall between this guy and this guy, because when this guy buffs his units, the units just kind of like lose the buff when they enter Idol of Change. When the enemy or like I made like a mistake. I made a Chains of Chaos a Magister, but I was also like playing Idol of Change, so like the enemy could just kind of like walk into the Idol of Change, get rid of the chains, the powerful debuff, and then like be completely fine. So I think if you're playing this sort of a warband and these two together, you have to be extremely careful how you're actually using your Idol of Change. And I think you are best off actually using either the Magister or the Doomweaver. I probably wouldn't use them at the same time. And I think like Doomweaver is also like kind of better suited for the crit builds due to the Idol of Lost. So I think I'm just gonna put this character into the good category. Yeah, sure. I mean, honestly, like the reason why this character is just like kind of crazy mostly just has to deal with Idol of Blood. And you're not able to actually kill the Idol of Blood because it has like 500 health and it's like almost impossible to kill. If you like took away some of the Idol of Blood from this character, like imagine this character doesn't have like Idol of Blood, then it wouldn't be as crazy. So I think that's kind of like my point regarding this character. I think this character also works best as a melee resistance tank or like a Siege Curse procer in this warband specifically, because it applies like relevant debuffs to the enemy. So, and it actually might be even like more consistent ways of like AoE stunning the enemy team rather than using the Division of Torment, because this is like an or, right? So it's like either stuns all targets or inflicts a debuff. But the thing is, like, people may also be able to uh, pass the magic resistance. If you're invoking an AoE stun with a Doomweaver, you're not going to have that issue because you're not going to be going through any magic resistance. It just kind of happens. So this character might be like even better at like proccing the stun, for example, against any like melee resistance tanks if you like get yourself into the corner with this character and so on. I think I really like the idea of like that Siege Curse procer for the cult, and it's also like very in theme for the cult with the all the crazy RNG and stuff. So yeah. Honestly, I guess that's about it for this thing. Yeah, I guess that's honestly it. So yeah, see you guys and good time.